The AI irony. As organizations race to adopt artificial intelligence, a striking irony emerges. The technology is often directed at the wrong targets. AI can churn out generic mission statements and auto-generate email responses, but it rarely addresses the core inefficiencies that weigh down modern workplaces. Instead of using these tools to streamline bloated management structures or eliminate redundant roles, companies deploy them to automate surface-level tasks, leaving the deeper issues untouched. This misapplication is everywhere. Companies invest heavily in AI systems that monitor employee activity, tracking keystrokes and screen time with precision. These so-called bossware tools flag employees for taking breaks or pausing their mouse movements, yet they remain oblivious to entire departments that produce no measurable results. A Fortune 500 audit found that AI surveillance caught thousands of minor productivity incidents, but failed to identify a compliance team whose output was non-existent. The algorithms focus on what's easy to measure, not what matters. Administrative automation follows the same pattern. AI sorts resumes by keywords, generating neat candidate lists for HR, but does nothing to assess whether the roles themselves are necessary. Hiring algorithms automatically filter out applicants lacking trendy certifications, even when internal data shows no link between those credentials and job performance. The cycle perpetuates itself. Humans are hired to review the AI's decisions, creating more work rather than less. In the financial sector, the contradiction becomes even clearer. Banks deploy advanced machine learning to flag suspicious transactions, yet maintain layers of vice presidents and strategic initiatives, teams whose contributions are impossible to quantify. The technology excels at catching micro inefficiencies while overlooking the macro-level waste that persists at the top. Consulting and legal firms have adapted AI to fit their own rituals. Reports are drafted by natural language models, then handed off to teams of consultants or associates who humanize the output. The final product is more expensive and takes longer to produce, but the process justifies both the technology and the human roles built around it. Law firms use AI to review contracts, only to hire more staff to interpret and debate the AI's findings. The promise of efficiency is lost in the layers of oversight and validation that spring up in response. Healthcare and education offer their own examples. Hospitals implement AI diagnostics, then employ specialists to verify the technology's recommendations, often extending patient wait times without improving care. Universities use plagiarism detectors that flag student work, prompting the formation of academic review panels that spend more time policing the system than fostering original thought. In each case, AI is used to create new forms of busywork rather than to reduce it. The same logic governs government agencies and startups. The DMV automates license renewals with facial recognition, yet still requires multiple human reviewers to sign off on each application. Startups tout AI-driven hiring platforms while keeping large recruiting teams to override the technology's recommendations. Communications departments use AI to draft press releases, then pay staff to revise them for brand voice, resulting in minimal changes at considerable cost. Perhaps the clearest example is the rise of AI ethics teams. Tech companies employ entire departments to monitor algorithmic fairness, but these teams often have little authority to alter core systems. Their reports are filed away as a formality, while the algorithms continue unchanged. The function is symbolic, meant to reassure stakeholders rather than to drive substantive reform. These patterns reveal a consistent theme. AI is being used not to eliminate unnecessary work, but to sustain it. For every dollar spent on automating tasks, even more is spent on creating new roles to monitor, interpret, and justify the technology's output. The intended simplification gives way to new layers of bureaucracy, as organizations prioritize the management of AI over addressing the inefficiencies it was meant to solve. This is not a failure of technology, but a reflection of how organizations choose to apply it. AI is deployed to reinforce existing structures, not to question their necessity. The result is a workplace where the tools designed to increase efficiency end up preserving, and even multiplying, the very inefficiencies they were meant to replace. This cycle of adaptation and entrenchment isn't unique to AI. It echoes patterns that have surfaced throughout history, each time new technologies or systems promise to make work the historical pattern. Across centuries, organizations have shown a remarkable ability to preserve roles long after their original necessity has faded. The persistence of obsolete jobs isn't a recent quirk. It's a recurring pattern rooted in bureaucracy, tradition, and human psychology. 18th century British warships, for example, kept powder monkeys on the roster for decades after advances in artillery made the role unnecessary. These boys once carried gunpowder to cannons, but as technology improved, the need for their labor vanished. Still, the position lingered, sustained by routine and the reluctance to question established practices. This pattern is visible in other historical settings. In the Ottoman Empire, the Sultan's tea taster remained a fixture of court life long after the risk of poisoning had faded. The role shifted from essential security to a ceremonial duty, yet continued for generations. The job's survival wasn't about actual need. It was about maintaining appearances and upholding institutional habits. Victorian England's knocker-ups, people paid to wake factory workers, persisted well into the 20th century, long after alarm clocks became affordable. The service endured because it was familiar, not because it solved a problem that still existed. Bureaucratic inertia often turns oversight into its own self-sustaining system. The British Admiralty once employed keepers of the naval broom, officials tasked with organizing cleaning tools, a job that outlived its purpose by centuries. Similarly, early railroads didn't eliminate signalmen after automating signals. Instead, they rebranded them as signal supervisors, tasked with overseeing the new technology. Rather than reducing headcount, automation simply shifted roles, echoing today's tendency to create AI overseers who monitor software that rarely needs human intervention. The same cycle appears in civil service and industry. The U.S. Postal Service retained mail handlers to sort envelopes years after machines took over the task. These workers filled out daily logs documenting work that had already been done by automated systems. In British textile mills, overseers were hired to monitor child labor, and then overseer supervisors were added to monitor the overseers, until the compliance apparatus outnumbered the very children it was meant to protect. Each new layer of oversight justified the one before it, creating a bureaucracy that was difficult to dismantle. Legal and academic professions have their own versions of this pattern. 19th century English law firms kept junior barristers copying documents by hand long after printing presses made the task redundant. As their duties faded, these roles morphed into reviewing or managing paperwork generated by others. Universities maintained disputators to oversee debates that students had stopped attending, eventually turning these positions into committee roles focused on managing the paperwork left behind by the original activity. In medicine, asylums employed moral therapists to document patient progress, then record verifiers to confirm the paperwork was in order, even when neither had much bearing on patient care. The focus shifted from outcomes to process, with each new role justified by the paperwork generated by the last. Military and corporate organizations follow similar trajectories. The Prussian army kept parade ground sweepers long after their duties lost relevance, while early oil companies employed whale oil quality testers decades after switching to petroleum. When confronted with the redundancy, these roles were simply rebranded rather than eliminated. What ties these examples together is not just bureaucratic inertia, but also the influence of status and self-worth. Managers have long hoarded staff as a way to signal importance, a behavior seen in both feudal courts and modern corporations. The Puritan capitalist work ethic further entrenches these patterns, linking self-worth to the act of working, regardless of the work's value. People find comfort in routines, even when those routines no longer serve a real purpose. Attempts to eliminate obsolete roles rarely succeed outright. More often, the positions are renamed, their duties shifted, or their importance reframed. The cycle endures because it meets psychological needs and reinforces organizational hierarchies. Across economic systems, from imperial courts to modern offices, useless jobs persist, not as anomalies, but as features of how institutions adapt and survive. Yet, while this historical pattern is deeply ingrained, it's not unbreakable. Some organizations have managed to challenge these traditions and show that work can be restructured to focus on real value rather than inertia. Breaking the cycle. Instead of accepting bureaucracy as inevitable, some organizations have chosen to dismantle it and build something different. These companies have reimagined how work gets done, focusing on trust, autonomy, and the removal of unnecessary layers. Their approaches vary, but the results challenge the idea that hierarchy and busywork are prerequisites for success. Valve Corporation, a video game developer, is a well-known example. The company operates without formal managers or rigid project assignments. Employees choose which projects to join, form teams organically, and move between tasks as needed. There's no need for approval chains or status meetings. Work organizes itself around shared goals and interests. This flat structure hasn't hindered Valve's output. The studio has produced some of the most influential games in the industry. The absence of layers hasn't led to chaos, but to a culture where talented people collaborate directly and ideas move quickly from concept to execution. Morningstar, a tomato processing company, applies similar principles in a completely different sector. The company has no managers, job titles, or centralized decision-making. Every employee negotiates their responsibilities with their colleagues. Instead of performance reviews from above, compensation is determined through peer feedback. Each person writes a personal mission statement, outlining their contribution to the organization's objectives. Morningstar has grown into the world's largest tomato processor using this approach, showing that even large-scale manufacturing can function without traditional management structures. In the Netherlands, a national trial of the 4-day workweek produced striking results. Over 1,000 workers participated, and after the trial, the vast majority of companies chose to keep the shorter schedule. Productivity levels held steady or improved, and employees reported less stress, better work-life balance, and higher job satisfaction. The key was not asking people to cram more into fewer days, but rather eliminating waste, unnecessary meetings, redundant processes, and tasks that added little value. This experiment suggests that reducing hours does not have to mean reducing output, especially when organizations are willing to rethink how work is structured. Other companies have taken aim at meeting culture. Shopify, for instance, eliminated all recurring meetings with fewer than 50 participants. They also introduced No Meeting Wednesdays, giving staff a full day each week for uninterrupted work. Employees reported fewer distractions and more time to focus on meaningful tasks. The company didn't need new software or a radical overhaul, just the willingness to question whether every meeting was truly essential. Some organizations are changing how they measure productivity. Rather than tracking hours or counting completed tasks, they focus on outcomes. A German software company stopped requiring time logs and status updates. Developers worked at their own pace, moving from project to project until completion. The result was a significant reduction in project timelines, with less time spent on reporting and more on actual problem solving. Universities are experimenting as well. A handful have dropped publication quotas for faculty, instead evaluating research based on its impact and relevance. Professors now produce fewer papers, but the work is more substantial and meaningful. Early results show a decline in burnout and a renewed focus on genuine scholarship, rather than meeting arbitrary targets. Even in sectors known for regulation and hierarchy, alternatives are emerging. An Australian bank removed all middle management from one division, replacing them with self-directed teams. These groups set their own priorities and divided work based on strengths. After a year, customer satisfaction and employee engagement both improved, and the model is being expanded to other parts of the business. These examples point to a simple conclusion. The way work is organized is not fixed. Structures that seem permanent can be redesigned, and habits that feel necessary can be left behind. The hardest part is not finding alternatives, but overcoming the inertia and fear that keep organizations locked into old patterns. Most resistance comes from a desire for stability or a reluctance to let go of familiar routines. What separates these organizations is not technology or industry, but a willingness to focus on outcomes, trust employees, and eliminate what doesn't contribute to real value. They show that meaningful work and efficiency are possible when organizations let go of the need to control every detail. The challenge for most people is not just to recognize these options, but to decide how to apply them in their own careers. Your exit strategy. If you're hoping to escape the cycle of pointless meetings and performative busywork, your best route is to focus on work that can't be faked or outsourced away. The clearest exit strategy is to build skills that produce obvious, tangible results, skills that resist both automation and bureaucratic dilution. In these roles, your value is tied directly to what you create, fix, or deliver, not to how many status updates you send, or how well you play along with office politics. Trades are the most direct example. Plumbing, electrical work, and carpentry all require certified expertise, and the output is visible. A pipe carries water, a circuit delivers power, a cabinet fits or it doesn't. There's no room for abstract metrics or endless justification. You can't talk your way into being a competent welder. The same goes for specialized coding roles. If your code doesn't run, it doesn't matter how many buzzwords you use. These fields are insulated from the productivity theater that dominates so much of the modern workplace. The accountability is built in. Freelance work offers another path out. Platforms like Upwork and TopTal let you sell finished projects, apps, designs, articles, rather than hours spent in meetings or on calls. You're paid for what you deliver, not how well you perform the rituals of corporate life. This model rewards efficiency and skill, and it strips away much of the justification and reporting that fill traditional jobs. If you can produce work that clients want, you don't need to prove your value by filling out endless trackers or attending daily check-ins. Certain industries naturally repel the creation of meaningless roles. Healthcare, for example, is weighed down by administrative overhead, but frontline clinicians, nurses, doctors, radiologists, still do work that can't be replaced by a spreadsheet. A nurse's impact is measured in patients cared for, not in the number of emails sent. Aircraft maintenance, electrical engineering, and other technical fields share this trait. The work is either done correctly or it's not. There's little room for ambiguity or performative effort. Technical specialists often find that their reputation is their resume. A cybersecurity expert's value is obvious when systems remain secure. A skilled machinist's work is evident in every finished part. These roles don't require self-promotion or constant documentation to justify their existence. The results speak for themselves, and that clarity protects them from the layers of bureaucracy that proliferate elsewhere. Some professions, like software development, sit on the boundary. While big tech firms have created plenty of unnecessary roles, experienced developers, especially those with expertise in legacy systems or niche languages, are difficult to replace. Their output is essential and measurable. Unlike innovation evangelists or culture architects, their contribution shows up in systems that work. Trade unions play a role in keeping jobs meaningful. By enforcing clear job descriptions and compensation tied to skill, unions prevent the kind of role inflation that plagues corporate offices. You won't find a junior assistant pipe consultant on a union job site. Either you're qualified to do the work or you're not. Freelance marketplaces and direct-to-client work cut out much of the administrative noise. Writers, designers, and photographers can sell their work without having to become content strategists or visual asset managers. Upwork's data shows that freelancers often work fewer hours than their corporate counterparts, but with comparable or better earnings, and without the pointless rituals of office life. The key is to develop expertise that can't be easily faked or replaced. A carpenter can't bluff their way through a poorly built staircase. A journalist can't pretend to have written a compelling story. These roles resist the drift toward abstraction and ambiguity that enables BS jobs to thrive. Even as automation and AI advance, some types of work remain stubbornly resistant. An HVAC technician diagnosing a malfunction, a surgeon performing a procedure, a firefighter responding to an emergency. These jobs demand judgment, adaptability, and physical presence. They're not immune to bureaucracy, but their core value can't be captured in a dashboard or replaced by an algorithm. At the end of the day, the most reliable exit from the world of meaningless work is to focus on roles where output is real, where failure is obvious, and where success can't be faked. When the outcome of your labor is visible and necessary, the need for productivity theater fades. The path isn't glamorous, but it offers something that's become rare, a direct connection between effort and value. And once you see how much of modern work is about staying busy rather than getting things done, it becomes easier to step away from the game. For many, the reality is that work offers little sense of purpose beyond staying visible and occupied. Waylo's 2023 study found that 19% of U.S. workers believe their jobs are socially useless, a sign of how far the gap has grown between daily tasks and meaningful contribution. The prevalence of productivity theater and performative busyness reflects a system that rewards appearances rather than results. The solution isn't to work harder or accept the status quo. It's to recognize the patterns, question what adds value, and look for ways to focus on real outcomes. whether inside or outside traditional organizations. Comment